events that were discussed within this video, as Marlow had expressed these issues previously. However, he did not feel the need to act until the situation had become a major public relations disaster. Before we continue, I'd like to note that it is my belief that due to our lengthy issues, some things represented within Marlow's original segment on me were represented in the utmost negative light. I cannot blame Marlow for thinking this way. I merely just wish to explain that during this time I was extremely angry and held the belief that Marlow intentionally went out of her way to assassinate my character, and that she could not feasibly believe all that she stated in her video to be completely true. Within these discussions, there was a moment in time where I had thought about everything that had occurred, and whilst I still had issues with Marlow and some of the situations that had occurred, I did think it was time for me to move on from the project, which is when I eventually confirmed to Marlow and Enrico that
I don't know why he's only explaining everything to that would please Marlow. Why is he not adding his own flavor to it?
Once I felt the network was stabilized, I would take my leave and resign. At the time, I generally thought this was the best course of action for my personal life and for the progression of MC Tiers. Unfortunately, due to influences around me at the time and the overall revisiting of many of mine and Marlow's disputes over the years, I became frustrated. I was unsure and angry again. If I left and it was only Marlow, I had begun to be unsure that the staff would retain a correct level of involvement and control, or that the integrity of the high tiers would be protected from sporadic rule changes. Ultimately, not only was this ironic, as I had displayed many of the qualities I was so worried that Marlow would display and enact if I had left, but furthermore, in the end, I did not truly honor my commitment to the staff or to the players. It was never something I was going to be able to do with my own personal life. I was reckless, all due to being frustrated with the situation I had been put in. As the timeline suggests, these arguments and disputes continued for almost 5 months. Within this time, our dispute had spread below us, within our teams and within the network itself.
Also, this is all assuming that Marlow's an amazing person, which is just not true, because she's Danger Mario. So, this is all really useless.
So much so that staff members would begin to dispute and refuse to collaborate with each other, simply because one person associated with Learn and another with Marlow. This is the very essence of the split that was spreading in front of us throughout our debates and our arguments. It had become out of control. Action needed to be taken immediately. The entire network had come to a standstill. I lacked permissions in the vanilla tier list. I also wasn't privy to knowing the development schedules or planned updates within the tier list, whilst Marlow also had her perms restricted across Netherite Pot, Diamond Pot, and even SMP tier list, as my staff team no longer felt comfortable with her in the Discord chats. My teams were beyond frustrated and angry. They could not see why all the drama and commotion was worth it, as they were also starting to see the effects it was having on the community. I think it's important to note, even when speaking to some of my friends now, they believe and they have openly expressed to me that if I wasn't ready to commit to the project, I should have simply resigned and that things may have ended up better. And I must agree. Unfortunately, due to repeated delays in deliberations by Enrico throughout our discussions, and lack of control by letting both what at the time it felt like my staff team and Marlow's staff team break out and start elevating the situations as each party was demanding clarity and an answer, the community was coming to a standstill. If the management, the owners, and senior staff were focusing all the energy into the fact that Marlow and myself were at odds with each other, and that soon, one way or another, major change would be occurring, there was no reason to focus on development, updates, or the future growth. Ultimately, best practice was completely ignored and avoided here. To this day, I think there were many possible ways to handle this situation, but what did ultimately occur, I can only be certain, was the worst possible thing. It was clear that for the progression and benefit of the Minecraft competitive scene, Marlow would need to be loosened of the restrictions and drama that came with myself and Enrico. Upon ultimately informing me and Enrico that Marlow would be departing, Enrico quite swiftly began by pretending to delete the network owners group chat, where all the deliberations since July and dating even further back had occurred. The truth is, myself and Enrico had plotted to keep the group chat as a method of insurance. We did not wish for our words to be used against us, so we ensured Marlow did not have any further access to the chat. Next, I will cover some of what occurred after the MC Tiers migration had begun. In preparation for the re-release of MC Tiers, Marlow was getting ready to deploy an updated web design that she had purchased onto mctiers.com. Enrico took notice of this and quickly messaged his developer to intercept it and deploy the same design on our website. Doing this would cause community members to be under the impression that Marlow stole the design when she was actually the one who paid for it all along.
I heard, I don't know much about the situation, but I heard that what she did was illegal. The way she stole the website code or something. I don't know. We need to hear what Jittered has to say about it.
The interface that both of us were using was designed during
He's the guy that paid the developer to make it.
Midst of a
he's the guy that got the developer to make it. Maybe he didn't pay for it.
Formally planned partnership with the server Jackpot MC. However, it's important to note that Marlow had already discussed paying for this website and its design, so that she maintained ownership of it in case the partnership was cancelled, which it ultimately was. For some reason, when Jackpot MC realized that the design was being used, they tried to claim that they owned it. This is obviously false, since as we've seen previously, Marlow received explicit confirmation from the owners that she owned that side of things.
I mean, if you want to, sure. Even if we paid for it, we still view you as the owner.
And Jackpot was now suddenly backtracking on that. Whilst Enrico had believed this at the time, he even offered the Jackpot MC staff members compensation for their work, to which they had requested $5,000 from him. Enrico would for some reason corroborate what Jackpot was saying about all of this by insinuating that it was the Marlow Classic, as if Marlow regularly goes around attempting to steal assets from other people, which you've already seen is a complete
it is the Classic because she stole the Discord.
Representation of everything we've covered previously, including the mctears.com domain which Marlow legally owned. Jackpot MC would go around spreading rumors that Marlow had committed theft, so much so that I had to repeatedly question them and continuously be misled around the topic. When Marlow showed proof that she had paid for everything, Jackpot would then distort the truth by saying that she had only paid for game mode icons. Ironically, the icons being used had already been made by a friend of Marlow's and existed long before MC Tears had any form of collaboration with Jackpot, meaning this was an obvious lie.
I want to hear what Jitter has to say.
Something important to note is that even though Marlow had paid for both a website and a design, she was only using the design and not any of the code from the website Jackpot had made. Everything Marlow used was from independent commissioners, not even Jackpot MC. During this process, Marlow didn't even bother to fight for her rights over the website, since it wasn't in use, therefore pointless, even though she owned the rights to use it regardless. Jitter would end up fully blaming Marlow for scamming him out of $15,000, which is a completely outlandish claim. What Jitter is referencing here is the fact that during the partnership that never went through, Jitter had paid for server hosting costs that were planned to be for an MC Tears practice server.
That's true.
This practice server upon initial release ended up being extremely buggy and had numerous issues that made it virtually unplayable. Over the course of Jackpot MC's planned partnership with MC Tears, Marlow had noticed Jackpot and the staff team acting extremely unprofessionally, as well as regularly dissing other servers that they perceived themselves to be superior to. Marlow, with respect to all of the servers that had provided for the community over the years, did not like this conduct. In addition to this, staff members of Jackpot itself were making toxic remarks towards Marlow. Jackpot had also discussed plans to provide subscription purchases to players in hopes that many would forget to cancel, thus taking advantage of that and obtaining a recurring revenue source. Marlow, under the impression that Jackpot's primary interest in partnering with MC Tears was based upon greed rather than concern for the community, along with the other aforementioned issues, would encourage Enrico for months to call the partnership off. Marlow would insist that cancelling the partnership was the right thing to do, however Enrico was hesitant to do so. Eventually, Marlow would make clear to Enrico that it was very inconsiderate to Jackpot MC not to inform them that we wanted to call the partnership off. This is made especially true by the fact that during this whole time frame, Jackpot had been paying server hosting costs. As a result of everything Marlow had been saying, Enrico would finally inform Jackpot that the partnership was off. Enrico's message calling the partnership off specifically cites Marlow as being the primary reason for it being called off. Jitter would end up rephrasing this entire narrative as if Marlow was the one responsible for his continued payment of server costs after the partnership was cancelled.